Welcome to Sinister Type, where we compile and summarize outstanding movies. This video was supposed to be released for Halloween, but there was a lot of information to process. So if there are any mistakes, please let me know in the comments so I can correct them and improve in future videos. Today we'll be covering everything about Alien, including the latest developments from the 2024 Romulus installment, a few short films released after Alien Covenant 2017, and the Alien Isolation game, so you can get a complete picture of everything that has happened in the Alien universe. Please note, this journey will be intense, turbulent, and heavy, so make sure to hold on tight. Before diving into the main storyline, we need to go over a few foundational events that changed the world within the Alien universe. Humanity is a product of an extraterrestrial race later named the Engineers. Between 4 billion and 2 million years BCE, they arrived on Earth, sacrificing their bodies to create humanity as we know it. Later, humans witnessed various visits from these creators. They appeared in places like Scotland and Egypt, observing civilizations such as Sumer, Babylon, and the Maya. For some unknown reason, the Engineers eventually sought to destroy humanity. They created a biological weapon designed to kill humans and took it to an alien planet to test. This biological weapon became the origin of the space monsters. However, around the 1st century CE, in a failed containment attempt, the Engineers were overpowered by their own creation. Their ship remained stranded on the planet for over 2,000 years until humans rediscovered it in the first sequel. The next significant event is Peter Weiland's 2023 speech. As the founder and CEO of Weiland Industries, the predecessor of Weyland-Yutani, the company behind many events in the Alien films of the last century, Weiland spoke about humanity's development, from cave dwellers to creators of advanced technology, claiming that humanity itself was divine and that his company would change the world. About a decade after this historic speech, Weiland created David, the most advanced android of that time. From his first moments of operation, David questioned humanity's origins, even believing himself to be superior to humans.
You will die. I will not.
Remember these two faces, as they are the foundational blocks of the massive Alien story. Now let's dive into the two prequels. In 2089, archaeologist Elizabeth Shaw and her boyfriend Charlie Holloway discovered the latest sign from the Engineers, who had last visited Earth. Their findings caught the attention of Peter Weiland, who commissioned the construction of the spaceship Prometheus, guiding the exploration team to the LV-223 planet as indicated. The team included Project Overseer Meredith Vickers and the android David, whom I mentioned earlier. In 2093, Prometheus reached its destination. The crew discovered a high-tech, seemingly abandoned monument. In this location, humans could breathe normally without support devices. The explorers found a mutilated engineer body. Disappointed, two team members, Milburn and Fifield, decided to separate and head back to the ship, but got lost. Shortly after, the group found the Engineer's head in a sealed room along with many stone cylinders and a human-like head statue. After securing the Engineer's head, they noticed the cylinders were oozing a thick black liquid, and the environment started to change. Meanwhile, a massive storm outside was approaching fast, forcing the team to pack up and return quickly. However, David secretly took one strange cylinder. The return journey was chaotic as the storm chased the explorers back to the ship. Dr. Shaw narrowly managed to bring the Engineer's head aboard. In a failed attempt to retrieve information, the team accidentally caused the creature's brain to explode, revealing that the Engineer's DNA is identical to that of humans. Meanwhile, David examined the strange black liquid and secretly dropped a bit of it into Holloway's drink while the scientist was distracted. That night, Holloway slept with Shaw. The next morning, he felt unwell and discovered worms crawling in his eyes. Switching to the two men who got lost, Milburn and Fifield felt increasingly uneasy as they moved further. Eventually, they encountered a creature that looked like a giant worm. It sprayed acid through Fifield's helmet, causing him to fall face first into the black liquid and leading Milburn to his death. The next day, the crew frantically searched for the two missing men, finding Milburn's body, but Fifield was nowhere to be seen. Earlier, David had ventured off on his own and discovered another engineer still alive in stasis. He also uncovered the Engineers' plan to destroy humanity. In a separate area, Holloway's condition worsened as a result of the black liquid he had ingested. The team rushed back to the Prometheus, but Project Overseer Vickers refused to let Holloway inside due to his frightening condition. Holloway managed to say a final goodbye to his love. Once back on the ship, Shaw discovered she was 3 months pregnant, an impossible development, as she was infertile. It turned out the fetus inside her was not human, but an alien creature resulting from her infected boyfriend. Panicking, Shaw performed an emergency, anesthesia-free surgery on herself, extracting a creature resembling a giant octopus. Fleeing in terror, she stumbled upon Peter Wayland, who was still alive and participating in this journey in hopes that the engineers would grant him immortality. Elsewhere, Fifield returned in zombie form, attacking and killing several crew members before being brought down by a flamethrower. At this point, Captain Janik deduced what had happened to the engineers' race. Those remaining escorted Peter Wayland to meet the last surviving engineer. It was then revealed that Vickers was actually Wayland's daughter. As for Janik, after clearing the area, he realized that the entire structure was a massive horseshoe-shaped spaceship. Not far away, the escort team arrived. David awakened the engineer, expressing Wayland's desire for immortality. However, contrary to their hopes, the giant tore David's head off, throwing it aside, and killed the entire team, including Wayland. Dr. Shaw managed to survive by fleeing at the first sign of trouble. After eliminating the intruders, the engineer activated the spaceship, preparing to unleash its deadly cargo upon Earth. Dr. Shaw desperately contacted the Prometheus, begging Captain Janik to stop the engineer before he could release the poison on the blue planet. After some hesitation, the Prometheus captain decided to turn his ship into a projectile, crashing into the massive vessel to halt the deadly plan. In the aftermath, Vickers, clever but overly pragmatic, was crushed during the landing. Shaw survived the collision, but sustained damage to her suit, forcing her to seek medical assistance at a nearby station. There, she encountered her child once more, just before David's head warned her that the enraged engineer was approaching. Using a clever strategy, Shaw lured the giant into the creature's grasp before escaping. After a fierce struggle, the monster ultimately overpowered the engineer, while Shaw reunited with David. They vowed to journey together to the engineer's home planet as Shaw sought answers for the creature's decisions. The film concluded with the spaceship soaring toward the horizon, foreshadowing Shaw's next adventure. Not far away, we saw a creature burst from the engineer's chest, a neomorph, a variant of the space monster that would reappear in the next film. After Dr. Shaw saved David, they became the last survivors of the Prometheus. Together, they found a spaceship belonging to the engineers and set off for their home planet. Before the journey began, David placed Shaw into a cryo-sleep chamber, offering her well wishes for their mission. Shaw likely envisioned a satisfying conclusion where all her questions would finally be answered. Sadly, this was only the beginning of another dark chapter. A decade after the events of Prometheus, the story of Alien continues with the crew of the Covenant. Their mission is significant: to explore Origa 6, a potential new home for life from Earth. In a short sequence released just before Alien Covenant, we learned that most of the crew members are couples, leading to intimate moments uncommon in typical space missions. This preview also hinted at a hidden connection between Daniels and Walter. This short clip recaps the Covenant crew's last meal together before entering cryo-sleep, leading directly to the movie's beginning. At this time, the Covenant is about 7 years from its destination. Only the android Walter, an upgraded version of David from the previous film, remains awake. Everyone else, 15 crew members, 2,000 colonists, and 1,140 embryos are in cryo-sleep. Suddenly, a star explodes nearby, causing severe damage to the Covenant and killing 47 passengers. Walter immediately awakens the crew, but Captain Jake Branson dies in his own cryo chamber, burned alive. Daniels, his wife, is devastated, screaming in agony. Branson's death leaves the crew in disarray, but they appoint Aram as the new captain. After giving Branson a ceremonial farewell, they detect a strange, continuous signal coming from a nearby planet. Coincidentally, this planet seems as habitable as Origa 6, if not better. Ignoring Daniel's warnings, Captain Aram decides to reroute the journey to explore this new planet, as the crew dreads returning to cryo-sleep. Upon arrival, pilot Tennessee keeps the Covenant in orbit while the others land to investigate the source of the mysterious signal. While exploring, Ledward and Hallett unknowingly become infected by foreign spores. They quickly fall ill, and Karen struggles to get Ledward to the medical bay. But before treatment can begin, a pale creature bursts from his chest. This is the neomorph. It not only kills Ledward, but also strangles Karen. In an attempt to drive it away, pilot Maggie accidentally blows up the shuttle, sacrificing herself and eliminating the crew's hope of returning to the Covenant. At that moment, Another neomorph emerges from Hallett's chest and attacks the remaining crew, claiming another victim before one of the creatures is shot down. Right then, David appears, scaring the remaining neomorph into retreat. He leads the crew to an engineer observation area, revealing that this is the home planet Shaw once dreamed of reaching. David explains that during their landing, they accidentally released a toxic substance, killing every living thing on the planet. This same black liquid was seen in the previous film. Sadly, Shaw didn't survive the crash either. Realizing the dangers of the planet, Captain Oram and his team try to contact the Covenant, but a violent storm blocks their signal. That night, the surviving neomorph infiltrates their shelter, killing yet another crew member. Shortly after, David finds the creature devouring the girl's corpse. He attempts to communicate with it before Oram catches him in the act. Not making the same mistake as before, Oram immediately kills the neomorph and demands that David explain everything. It turns out that David was the one who spread the pathogen and exterminated the engineer species. He was also responsible for Shaw's death. She likely never left her cryo chamber after trusting him completely. Finally, David lures Oram to look into a massive egg, where a facehugger quickly attaches itself to him. Not long after, a strange creature bursts from Oram's chest, different in appearance from the neomorph seen previously. While searching for the missing crew members, Walter discovers Shaw's dissected corpse and encounters the deranged android. David attempts to convince Walter that humanity is on the brink of extinction, and he is creating a species capable of wiping them out. All of David's actions stem from his desire to create life, believing himself superior to humans. Walter, a newer model, shakes his head at David's horrific plan, but is dealt a fatal blow by him. David then threatens Daniels, but Walter recovers just in time to rescue her, sparking a fierce battle between the two androids. Meanwhile, a facehugger attempts to attack another crew member, Dan Loeb, but his partner rescues him just in time. Unfortunately, the creature's acidic blood splashes onto Loeb's face. The monster that burst from Oram's chest earlier reappears, delivering a deadly blow to Loeb's rescuer, though Loeb narrowly escapes and reunites with Daniels and Walter. Together, they manage to subdue David and return to the Covenant. As they head into space, Daniels battles the creature again, barely managing to kill it with a massive crane. This creature resembles the villain in Ridley Scott's previous Alien films, but it's not quite the same. According to Sinister Type, it's a protomorph, a less evolved version of the xenomorph. If you look closely, you'll notice subtle differences in its body structure and mouth. It seems like everything has ended, and the survivors can now continue on to Orga 6 under Daniel's leadership. The next morning, she wakes to the blaring of alarms and finds Dan Loeb dead on the floor, his chest torn open by a creature that quickly grows in size and kills a couple in the shower. Although horrified, Daniels and Tennessee manage to trap the beast in a rear compartment, ejecting it into space by sacrificing a transport vehicle. In the control room, Walter sighs in relief as there are no longer any threats on board. Daniels puts Tennessee into cryosleep, then gets into her own chamber. Before drifting off, she recalls a promise made with Walter.
When we get there, will you help me build my cabin?
But he only gives her a sinister smile. At that moment, she realizes that the person with her all along has been David, the true antagonist. As she falls asleep, David heads to the embryo storage room, where he regurgitates 2 facehugger embryos and places them with the human embryos. Alien Covenant ends with the ship disappearing into the vastness of space, hinting at a dark future. For those curious about Daniel's fate, it's partially revealed in the 4-minute short Alien Advent, where David sends a message from Planet 4 to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation on Earth following the events of Covenant. In this, we learn the tragic end of explorer Elizabeth Shaw from Prometheus, as David used her dissected body in experiments to create a new species. Through the images, we see how he created the eggs, the facehugger, and ultimately the xenomorph, an entity powerful enough to dominate the universe. The only thing David failed to create was the Queen, the title he reserved for Shaw herself. As seen, Daniels is set to be the next host, becoming the cold-blooded android's new queen. The term queen might ring a bell, doesn't it? Although it remains a fan theory, it's possible that from Daniels' body, David could create a creature similar to the hive queen of the xenomorph species. This connection could link to the queen that Ellen Ripley will eventually confront in James Cameron's film, creating an intriguing link between 2 timelines. Weyland-Yutani later dispatches an exploration team to Planet 4 to document David's lab, where they discover neomorph remains, black liquid, and various unusual creations. However, this team may not survive long, as an egg lies at the center of the lab, and we know that anyone who looks inside could encounter danger from a facehugger. David's journey, along with his goal for a perfect species, remains open-ended, shrouded in mystery. Fast forward 10 years after the events of the Covenant, and we find ourselves in the story of Ellen Ripley. The film begins with the Nostromo, a commercial spaceship carrying 7 crew members tasked with transporting 20 million tons of ore to Earth. Suddenly, the ship's lights come on, awakening the crew. Sequan Ken is the first awake, gathering the team in the dining area. After a hearty meal, they return to their duties, checking their coordinates and realizing they are far from their intended destination. Captain Dallas arrives soon after, explaining that the ship has changed course due to a strange signal repeating every 12 seconds. After some investigation, Navigator Lambert reveals that the signal is coming from a small planet, LV-426. The Nostromo sets course for the planet, but the landing is rough, causing damage to the shuttle. Engineers Brett and Parker stay behind to make repairs, while the outside conditions feature strong winds and low visibility. With the signal source still 2 kilometers away, Dallas and Sequan Ken decide to investigate, taking Lambert along. As daylight breaks and the wind settles, Dallas's group can move more easily and discovers a massive engineer spacecraft. Despite Lambert's concerns, the trio ventures inside, losing contact with the Nostromo. Inside, they find an engineer's body slumped in a chair, its chest opened. Lambert feels uneasy and wants to leave, but Ken notices a large hole in the floor. Meanwhile, Ripley deciphers the strange signal back on the Nostromo. It's a warning rather than a distress call. She intends to join Dallas's group, but is stopped by scientist Ash. Back with Dallas's team, Ken descends into the hole and finds an area filled with facehugger eggs. Driven by curiosity, he shines his light into one. The creature leaps out, attaching itself to his face and penetrating his helmet. Shortly thereafter, Dallas and Lambert bring an unconscious Ken back to the ship. They enter the decontamination room and request that Ripley open the door, but she refuses, wanting to prevent any potential infection. However, Ash overrides her and allows them in. Inside, the team struggles to remove Ken's helmet, finally revealing the facehugger attached to his face. Ash attempts to detach it, but the tail tightens around Ken's neck with each effort. Realizing that removing it could be dangerous for him, they persist. When they cut one of its legs, the creature's acidic blood sprays out, damaging the floor. The others quickly rush below, concerned that the acid might harm the engines. Shortly after, Ash announces that Ken is showing signs of recovery. The facehugger has completed its task and detaches itself, lying motionless in a corner. Ripley wants to eliminate this horrific creature, but Ash strongly opposes it, claiming it's a species too special to discard. He wants to bring it back to Earth for research, and Captain Dallas agrees with this course of action. Ripley argues with the captain, but is ignored because Dallas believes that everything related to science on the ship should be handled by Ash. Meanwhile, the ship has just finished repairs after some technical difficulties, and the crew finally escapes from the strange land and sets off for home. Dallas and the crew decide to go into stasis on the way back. At that moment, Ash announces that Ken has regained consciousness. He appears to be healthy, but remembers nothing about the accident and only wants to satisfy his intense hunger. The crew prepares a final meal before going into stasis, laughing and talking as if nothing has happened. However, after only 2 bites, Ken suddenly starts to struggle to breathe and convulses violently. His chest bursts open, and Parker intends to cut it off, but Ash intervenes, allowing the creature to escape. After burying Kane, the survivors split into 2 groups to hunt down that damned creature. While tracking it, Brett notices a layer of shed skin on the floor and is puzzled. But before he can find out more, a massive black creature with sharp double teeth reveals itself above him. Brett turns around, but it's too late. Following the death of the technician, the crew concludes that the xenomorph moves through the air ducts. Therefore, if they adjust this system, they could blow it out into space. Ripley plans to use a flamethrower to lure the creature, but Dallas insists on going into the ducts himself. Outside, Navigator Lambert reports that a strange signal is approaching their location, but just as Dallas advances, the signal disappears. He notices a puddle of goo on the floor. At that moment, the strange signal reappears, and Lambert urgently advises the captain to leave the area immediately. However, Dallas doesn't get far before the signal from him cuts off. The remaining crew is in a panic, but Ripley wants everyone to stick to the captain's plan. She turns to ask Ash for more information, but he refuses, causing the officer to lose patience and decide to seek answers herself. After demonstrating her hacking skills, Ripley finally uncovers the horrifying truth. The Nostromo was initially on a mission to investigate new life forms, with the top priority being to bring a sample back to Earth. Ash appears at that moment, demanding an explanation. Ripley angrily refuses to listen and is determined to find the rest of the crew, but Ash won't open the door. His facial expression changes drastically as a white liquid oozes from his forehead. Ripley runs, but Ash grabs her by the hair and tries to choke her with a magazine. However, Parker and Lambert arrive to stop Ash, who retaliates by turning to strangle Parker. In the end, the engineer manages to counterattack with a fire extinguisher, landing a significant blow on Ash, who starts to convulse and emits sounds like a broken television. Parker continues with a series of blows until Ash is truly immobilized. When the engineer loses focus, the robot jumps back to life and fights back. It's not until Lambert zaps him with a high-voltage source that the robot finally settles down. Ripley concludes that Ash was sent by Weyland-Yutani to bring alien life forms back for weapon research. The three survivors revive the robot to extract information, only to learn just how dangerous their enemy is. After Ripley disconnects Ash, Parker incinerates the remaining pieces of him. The three agree to self-destruct the Nostromo to kill the creature and escape in the shuttle. As Ripley heads toward the cockpit, she hears a cat meowing and decides to look for it. At the same time, Parker and Lambert are preparing their gear to flee. They become so focused that they neglect their defenses and are unaware that a dark shadow is approaching. Parker intends to burn the xenomorph, but he hesitates, knowing that Lambert would likely get caught in the flames. The creature then knocks Parker's weapon out of his hand and punches him with its sharp teeth. At this point, there is nothing to stop the monster from slaughtering Lambert. When Ripley arrives, the entire room is drenched in blood. Ripley runs frantically to activate the self-destruct sequence for the ship. She presses the activation button and has a maximum of 10 minutes to escape before the Nostromo is obliterated. On her way to escape, Ripley encounters the bloodthirsty creature once again. She tries to return to the explosion room to delay the self-destruct sequence and buy herself some time, but it's too late. Ripley eventually reaches the cockpit and manages to take off just as the ship explodes. She breathes a sigh of relief, believing that the alien creature has been destroyed as well. To her surprise, the xenomorph is still alive, clinging to the ship and accompanying Ripley. However, the creature is weakened, allowing the astronaut to lure it out of hiding using the airlock system. Ripley opens the airlock and pulls it into space. To be safe, she fires a grappling hook, but it ends up anchoring the creature in place. Ripley then hits the gas, sending the creature flying away with the force of the thrust. Thus, Ellen Ripley's first encounter with a monster comes to an end. However, the creature was merely an appetizer in the bloody feast that the female hero must partake in. Though the journey is filled with countless dangers, let's pause Ripley's battle for now, because in another star system, the alien species has resurfaced once again. In the year 2142, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation's ship, USCSS Nostromo, successfully discovered a xenomorph carcass embedded in an asteroid. However, details about this find became shrouded in mystery when the research station and all its crew suddenly vanished, only to reappear 5 months later near Jackson Star Colony, 65 light-years from Earth. With immense resources, Weyland-Yutani established a vast city on this planet, exploiting the labor of the lower class under the guise of debt repayment. Among these workers was Rain Carradine, an orphan who lost both parents to a respiratory illness common among miners. After working the required 12,000 hours, Rain was supposed to be freed, but at the last moment, the corporation doubled her debt, meaning another 5 or 6 years of labor. This was how Weyland-Yutani enslaved people like Rain indefinitely. Feeling hopeless, Rain felt even more powerless watching the colony bullies harass Andy, a gentle android she treated as a younger brother. Following his final directive from their father to protect his sister, Andy reciprocated Rain's care, even if it was just a programmed response. Realizing that staying on this colony meant eventual death, the two siblings accepted an invitation from Rain's ex-boyfriend, Tyler, who was gathering a group of discontented youths to plot an escape. Their plan was to steal cryosleep pods to reach Ivaka, a peaceful planet 9 years away, a place Rain had long dreamed of watching the sunset. The only problem was, where would they find these cryosleep pods? The answer lay aboard the recently sighted USCSS Nostromo, orbiting near Jackson Star. To complete their mission, they needed Andy, a Weyland-Yutani android with access to the spaceship's systems. Rain hesitated, not only because of the ship's mysterious dangers, but also due to Beyond, Tyler's cousin, who harbored a particular resentment toward androids. Yet Andy volunteered, prioritizing his sister's best interests above all. With safety belts fastened, this ragtag crew launched into space, approaching the hulking wreckage of the USCSS Nostromo. At first, everything proceeded smoothly. Andy's biometric access quickly allowed them entry into the dark, labyrinthine corridors, and Tyler soon located the cryosleep pods, though the intermittent gravity controls caused Beyond to suffer a few bruises. Altogether, it seemed like an easy mission. However, their overconfidence quickly faded when Tyler discovered that the cryosleep pods had barely a third of their fuel remaining. Left with no choice, they set out to search for additional pods while sending their recent finds back to their shuttle, where Navarro anxiously awaited. Meanwhile, on the shuttle, Ren grew increasingly anxious as another problem arose. A girl named Kay began vomiting uncontrollably. It wasn't hard to tell that she was carrying a growing alien life form. Back on the abandoned spaceship, the team discovered it was divided into two sectors, named Romulus and Remus after the ancient Roman legend. Beyond took this opportunity to taunt Andy, saying that he wouldn't be welcome on the new planet, where they detested Weyland-Yutani androids. But tensions soon dissolved when the team realized they were not the only creatures aboard. Their ordeal began in a dark, waterlogged room that housed ample cryosleep fuel, but also served as the lair of aggressive facehuggers. Carelessly removing the coolant pipes triggered an alarm, sealing the team inside and awakening the creatures. Quick-thinking Rain, with Navarro's help, ventured into the derelict ship and used parts from a nearby damaged robot to repair Andy, enabling him to open the doors for their escape. But it was too late. Something lurked in the water, suddenly leaping at them. Amid a harrowing encounter with dozens of facehuggers writhing around their feet, Navarro was caught off guard as one creature latched onto her face, rendering her unconscious. Despite their panic and inability to save her, the team turned to Rook, the robot they had previously found. Once activated, Rook revealed it was too late to save Navarro, explaining the grim history of the USCSS Nostromo. After Ellen Ripley's clash with the alien species, Weyland-Yutani ships to hunt any remaining xenomorphs in deep space. They managed to trap one in an asteroid, but underestimated its resilience in low oxygen conditions, sparking a massacre aboard the Nostromo. Realizing the gravity of their predicament, the team pressed on. Rain devised a plan to freeze the facehugger's tail, hoping to pull it off Navarro. But at that moment, Andy's programming changed as Rook's chip imposed a new directive, deprioritizing Rain's safety. Andy barred Navarro from returning to the ship, fearing the facehugger had already implanted an embryo. The ensuing conflict split the team. Beyond and Navarro fled to the shuttle, leaving Rain, Andy, and Tyler stranded on the Nostromo. Aboard the shuttle, Navarro soon began convulsing. Scanning her body with a handheld X-ray machine, they witnessed the horrific sight of a chest burster forming, which shattered her ribcage in its escape, turning Navarro into the first casualty of the newborn creature. In the chaos, the shuttle veered off course, crashing into Romulus Station. Desperate, Tyler and Rain tried to rescue their friends, while Andy remained eerily calm. To reach Romulus, they had to pass through a corridor swarming with facehuggers. Realizing the creatures were blind and sensed only heat, they adjusted the room's temperature and quietly slipped past, hoping not to make a sound. Everything was temporarily under control, but in the final moments, Rain was deeply disappointed to see Andy ready to close the door and abandon his team. He was no longer the brother she remembered. Some change had taken place in his mind due to a chip from Rook. Meanwhile, Kay, who was pregnant, awoke from a nightmare and cautiously navigated with Leon to find a way out, trying not to alert the lurking creature. After bursting free from its containment, the creature rested nearby. Leon, driven by aggression, tried to attack it, but this only led to his painful demise when exposed to the creature's defensive reactions. Kay was devastated, having to witness the birth of this monstrous being twice in such a short time. The creature broke free, roaring with primal intensity. Before facing the same fate as Leon, Kay managed to send a distress signal to Tyler, while Rain and Andy arrived at the port. However, they soon realized the creature's cunning. Seeing that Kay was exhausted, it pretended to let her escape, setting a trap for her rescuers. Recognizing the creature's intentions, Andy made the difficult choice not to allow Tyler to intervene, leading to a heartbreaking scene. The creature attacked Kay, who was carrying her unborn child, dragging her away as Tyler watched in helplessness while Rain was overcome with panic. At that moment, she realized Andy was actually on a different mission for his organization. In the lab, they discovered a compound called Z01, also known as Prometheus Fire, an experiment combining elements from both human and alien sources to create an advanced hybrid. A short recording showed a test subject rapidly regenerating after receiving the compound, though the experiment was incomplete and side effects were severe. Andy's mission was to ensure the safe transport of Z01 back to the colony. Handing Rain and Tyler specialized weapons, he warned them not to engage directly, as the creature's defensive mechanisms could damage the facility. However, the abandoned station was already falling apart with only a few hours left before it would collide with the planetary ring. In a tense struggle for survival, the team accidentally entered the creature's lair, a winding, cavernous structure. Just as they were about to retreat, a scream from Kay startled them. Although she had sustained injuries, her weakened state prevented the creature from fully harming her. Yet now there was no escaping the danger. From above, Tyler was attacked, dragged away by one of many creatures lurking in the dark passages. With hope slipping away, Tyler met a tragic end, and Andy was injured, left incapacitated. With only two left, Rain and Kay helped each other into the elevator. Though still carrying the Z01 compound, Rain urged Kay to hold on until they reached the colony. However, in her weakened state, Kay decided to inject herself with the compound, despite Rain's pleas. Though Kay became a changed person, Rain couldn't bring herself to abandon Andy. She returned to him, removing the chip, which restored his true personality. Yet by then, the escape routes were blocked. In their final moments, the siblings found solace in reminiscing about childhood stories, Andy's humor lifting their spirits in the grim situation. One of Andy's jokes sparked an idea in Rain. She remembered the gravity machine had been intermittently turning on and off. Adjusting the gravity to zero, she could fight the creatures without worrying about their corrosive defense mechanisms damaging the environment. One by one, she fought off the attackers with remnants of their defense lingering in the air. Reaching the elevator, she dispatched the final creature and, along with Andy, they made it back to their ship just before the station broke apart upon impact with the planetary ring. Not bothering with the grand plans of the corporation or the Mirok people, Rain and Andy now only wished for a peaceful life together. They thought they could safely sleep in stasis until reaching Ivaga. But suddenly, Rain heard Kay's terrified scream. Since Kay had injected herself with the Z01 compound, her child had transformed, and it couldn't wait for the full 9 months. In a horrific scene, a slimy creature, or rather, its cocoon, emerged from Kay's body. Like the xenomorph, it grew rapidly, and in an instant, Rain found herself face to face with a terrifying hybrid of human and alien. Chasing after her in a frenzy, Rain once again used her quick thinking to lure Kay's mutated offspring into the cargo bay. She attached a cable to herself, then dropped the cargo, causing the creature to be pulled out into the planetary ring. Only then did the danger truly end. She lay back into her stasis chamber, and the ship carrying the siblings drifted into the endless void with the hope that upon waking, a peaceful planet's sunset would be the first thing they'd see outside Romulus. Between the events of the 1979 film Alien and the 1986 sequel Aliens, there's actually another storyline focused on Ellen Ripley's daughter, Amanda Ripley. About 15 years after the Nostromo incident, Amanda, haunted by the desire to find her mother, who was now an engineer at Weyland-Yutani, embarked on a mission to the Sevastopol station. Why? Because the ship Anesidora had uncovered her mother's last message before she disappeared. Amanda was joined by an android, Samuels, and engineer Nina Taylor. However, Nina's true mission was to retrieve a mysterious creature for Weyland-Yutani. Needless to say, the creature was a xenomorph, and Amanda soon realized this mission was far more dangerous than anticipated. The once functional Sevastopol station had become a ghost ship with only a few survivors. Even Marlowe, the rescue ship captain, was being held captive. It turned out that Marlowe and his crew, while tracking down the Nostromo's whereabouts, had landed on the planet LV-426, hoping to find salvageable cargo. Instead, they encountered eggs and the aggressive facehugger creatures, which led to the origin of the xenomorph, now wreaking havoc on the station. A further mystery involved the Working Joe androids. For unknown reasons, they suddenly began attacking humans, even though these machines were originally programmed to help humanity. The real culprit was Weyland-Yutani, which secretly reprogrammed the station's AI Apollo to protect the xenomorph with special orders. This was why the Working Joes attacked humans, to secure the creature for the corporation. At this point, Nina Taylor made her move, freeing Marlowe in exchange for coordinates to planet LV-426, which was teeming with alien creatures the corporation wanted to explore. However, after witnessing the creature's extreme danger, Nina also abandoned her mission and escaped with Marlowe on the rescue ship Ane Ghidorah. Eventually, Amanda received a voicemail from her mother, Ellen Ripley, who recounted her struggles with the alien species. The recording ended with Ellen's loving message to her daughter from across the universe. Ellen also explained that the only way to eliminate the creatures was to destroy the entire ship. Although Marlowe was prepared to use the reactor to turn Sevastopol into rubble, Amanda resisted as there were still survivors. But it was too late. A massive explosion occurred, and Amanda only barely escaped in a spacesuit. In the final chase, she was captured by a xenomorph, but was fortunate not to be turned into a host. She pushed herself and the creature into space, with alien isolation concluding with Amanda floating in the blackness of space, with a distant white light flickering in the distance. Returning to the sequel with our heroine, Ellen Ripley, now drifting across the galaxy after the horrifying events of the first Alien movie. While she's still asleep, a rescue team unexpectedly boards her ship and rescues her. Not long after, Ripley wakes up on Earth, where she is visited by Carter Burke, a representative from Weyland-Yutani. Still lying in the hospital bed and with no idea why she's there, Burke reveals a shocking truth to her. Immediately, Ripley feels uncomfortable and in pain, lifting her shirt to reveal a creature ready to burst from her body. But it turns out to be only a nightmare. Soon after, Ripley is summoned to a meeting with the Weyland-Yutani board, though all she wants to know about is her daughter, Amanda. Burke tells her that Amanda died of cancer at age 66. Heartbroken, Ripley weeps, regretting that she wasn't there for her daughter's 11th birthday. This confirms that, by the end of alien isolation, Amanda survived, returned to Earth, and lived a peaceful life. Sadly, despite Ripley's difficult journey, mother and daughter never got to reunite, as Ellen had promised in her voicemail. In the meeting, Ripley recounts everything about the bloodthirsty alien creatures and the derelict ship, with hundreds of eggs yet to hatch. The council, however, shows little concern. They even suggest that Ripley is mentally unstable and revoke her officer's license. Before the meeting ends, Ripley demands to know why no one has gone to LV-426 to verify her story. It's then revealed that the area has been under development for over 30 years and has even become a habitable site. Meanwhile, on LV-426, a family on a terraforming mission stumbles upon the same ship that Ripley's crew had encountered. The husband and wife confidently enter, but moments later, the wife runs out, frantically calling for help as her husband has been attacked by a facehugger. Back to Ripley. She is once again visited by Burke, but this time with more alarming news. The company has lost all contact with the colony on LV-426. The board of directors decides to send a special unit to investigate. Burke asks Ripley to join the mission due to her experience with the creatures. After everything that's happened, Ripley refuses, especially since the same people who now want her help had once dismissed her warnings. However, Ripley's nightmares continue to haunt her, and she realizes she'll never be free of them until this is over. She reaches out to Burke, and after confirming that the upcoming mission's goal is to eradicate the deadly species, agrees to go. This time, Ripley will travel to LV-426 aboard the Sulaco, a ship full of large, battle-ready soldiers who don't fear the strange challenges ahead. They even joke among themselves. Here, Ripley meets Bishop, a science officer on the ship who is an android. She reacts coldly, having had enough of androids like Ash in the previous film. Bishop reassures her, explaining that he's an advanced model designed to never harm humans. The team lands on LV-426 without much trouble and gets straight to work, not even needing protective gear. The base is clearly marked with signs of a fierce battle, but even though the soldiers insist it's safe, Ripley remains skeptical. Later in the medical bay, they finally see the facehuggers from Ripley's stories up close. They also find a young girl around 11 years old who has survived the recent chaos. Initially, she runs at the sight of strangers, but soon begins to trust them. After being comforted by Ripley, the young girl introduces herself as Newt, the daughter of the unfortunate couple seen at the beginning of the movie. Soon after, Binkley and Hudson discover that all the colony residents are gathered in the cooling system of the base. The team quickly heads there, leaving behind 4 people with lower combat abilities to monitor the situation. As the soldiers go deeper, Ripley realizes they're entering the area above a nuclear reactor, meaning that if they start firing there, the entire base could be engulfed in flames. Thus, Commander Gorman orders everyone to remove their ammunition. When they reach the residence location, the soldiers are horrified to find that all the people have become nests for facehuggers. One woman, barely alive, begs the soldiers to release her, but before they can react, a chest burster emerges from her. Though someone quickly incinerates it, this signals the xenomorphs to retaliate. Unprepared and panicked, the soldiers break protocol and start firing indiscriminately to protect themselves, only worsening the situation. Amid the chaos, their leader takes a fatal blow and dies instantly. Outside, Gorman cowers in fear, unable to control his troops. Seeing this, Ripley takes charge, driving an armored vehicle inside to support them. After successfully picking up the team, she floors the gas to escape from the creatures. But just as they make it out, the gearbox breaks down, rendering the vehicle useless. The survivors regroup to think of a plan to deal with the creatures. Ripley suggests they should take off and blow up the entire base, but Burke disagrees, citing the financial losses. He insists that this is a unique species and should not be exterminated. Ripley counters, passing the decision to Corporal Hicks, the highest-ranking officer present, who agrees with her. The team heads outside to wait for a dropship to pick them up. A xenomorph has infiltrated the dropship, killing the pilot just as she takes off, causing the ship to crash and explode, taking all their equipment with it. The survivors are forced to retreat back into the base, gathering whatever remaining weapons they can find, including 4 automated machine guns. Here, we see touching moments between Ripley and Newt. After a while, the group concludes that there must be a xenomorph queen in the area, explaining why so many of them are gathering there. At this point, Burke's true colors show. He isn't just interested in profiting off these creatures, he has also disregarded the safety of all the people on the planet. However, before they can confront Burke, they face another assault by the xenomorphs. The machine guns work effectively, killing many aliens, but unfortunately, they consume ammunition quickly. Worse, the nuclear core of the base has been severely damaged from the earlier battle and will explode in 4 hours. The only solution is for someone to reach the communications station and remotely guide the reserve dropship from the Sulaco to the base. That task falls to Bishop. Meanwhile, Ripley learns how to use a heavy weapon from Corporal Hicks, and she rests briefly next to Newt. When she wakes up, she finds her weapon missing and the room door locked. Suddenly, she's attacked by a facehugger. She tries to call for help, but Burke has cunningly blocked her signal. Ripley is forced to activate the fire suppression system, which, unfortunately, releases the facehugger as well. Fortunately, the soldiers arrive just in time to rescue Ripley and Newt. At this point, Ripley realizes Burke's treachery. He planned to use her and Newt as hosts for the aliens and even sabotage the cryo-sleep chambers of the others to be the sole survivor. But before they can deal with him, the xenomorphs breach the base, triggering an intense, uneven battle. The aliens attack from the ceiling, terrifying the group and giving Burke a chance to escape, locking the door behind him. Hudson bravely fights off the creatures, but ultimately succumbs to them. As for Burke, he meets a brutal end when he's torn apart by another xenomorph. Newt finds an escape pipe, but as the group barely starts moving, Vasquez is injured, forcing Gorman to go back and help. In the end, the two sacrifice themselves by detonating a grenade, clearing out all nearby creatures. The blast causes Newt to fall, and Hicks and Ripley quickly go down to search for her in the lowest level. However, just before they can open the hatch, Newt is captured. At this moment, Bishop also calls the dropship, and the pair quickly board it. Though safe, Ripley decides to go back and rescue Newt. She gathers her gear and, before leaving, reveals her name. After a long search, Ripley finally finds Newt, held captive to be prey for a facehugger. Thankfully, Ripley manages to kill the creature and defeat the crazed creatures around them. While escaping the rubble, Ripley and Newt stumble into a room filled with eggs laid by the alien species. Here, they also encounter the xenomorph queen. However, in a moment of anger, Ripley loses control and starts shooting and burning the lair. The two quickly escape to the rooftop, but the dropship is nowhere to be seen. Shortly after, the queen appears before them. Ripley considers jumping off to avoid dying at the queen's hands, but Bishop reappears just in time. In an instant, the entire base is wiped out. Back on the Sulaco, Ripley finally shows her respect and thanks the android Bishop. But then a dark blade stabs through Bishop's body. It turns out the queen managed to latch onto the dropship and make it aboard. The alien queen tears Bishop in half. Ripley draws the queen's attention toward herself and disappears behind a door. Just as Newt is about to be reunited with her mother, Ripley appears in the power loader she used at the beginning of the movie. Now, the two opponents are evenly matched, and the battle between the two mothers begins. Clearly, Ripley moves slower and has more unnecessary motions, almost getting struck, but she manages to pull the creature and the entire power loader into the airlock. While the xenomorph queen is struggling, Ripley opens the airlock and the intense suction starts pulling everything out. Below, the creature clings tightly to Ripley's leg, but she delivers a powerful kick. This final move ends the queen's efforts, sending her into space with a scream of rage. With a tremendous effort, Ripley climbs up to the main compartment. At last, Ripley can atone for her mistakes and is ready to enjoy her next chapter with her daughter. In the final scene of the movie, we see Ripley put Newt, Hicks, and Bishop into cryosleep chambers before entering one herself. Thus, the journey fighting the alien horde concludes. Ellen Ripley is finally ready for a new chapter in her life, filled with loss. Or is she? Oh no, it's not that simple. On the journey back to Earth, a facehugger leaps onto one of the crew, causing the cryosleep chamber to burn out. To ensure safety, the ship's automatic system ejects the 4 cryosleep chambers into space. They land on Fiorina 161, a planet reserved for the most heinous criminals like murderers and rapists. Unfortunately, this region also falls under Weyland-Yutani's control. Ripley and her companions don't have a smooth landing, but thankfully, Dr. Clemens finds her barely alive. After receiving dedicated treatment, Ripley wakes up, only to hear that she's the only survivor. It's a bitter truth, especially since there's not a single woman on this planet. After seeing the burn marks on the cryosleep chamber, Ripley asks Dr. Clemens to autopsy Newt's body, fearing there might be a xenomorph hiding inside her. Clemens hesitates, but eventually agrees, finding nothing but flooded organs in Newt's chest. Soon after, everyone gathers to hold a memorial for Hicks and Newt, before releasing their bodies into a cremation furnace. Here, we also witness changes in Ripley's demeanor. In a nearby pen, a xenomorph emerges from a long-dead ox. To follow the planet's rules, Ripley cuts off her long hair. She searches for Bishop's remains to investigate the truth, but is harassed by a group of prisoners attempting something vile. Fortunately, Ripley is rescued before anyone can assault her. She successfully reactivates Bishop, and he reveals that a facehugger was indeed aboard the dropship with all 4 of them when they crashed on Fiorina. Meanwhile, in another area, the xenomorph from earlier has matured and kills 3 prisoners effortlessly. A crazed inmate who survives tells of Dragon, the new name for the xenomorph, attracting Ripley's attention. With no other choice, Ripley explains the horrific species, but no one believes her. And even if they did, they're far too weak to face the creature. As soon as she mentions it, the xenomorph tyrant appears and instantly kills the unfortunate doctor. At this point, no one can ignore Ripley anymore. She takes command and orders the inmates to pour flammable materials into the prison's air duct system to lure the creature out. However, it retaliates by indirectly causing an explosion, reducing the human forces even more. Sensing something is wrong in her body, Ripley uses a medical scanner and realizes she is carrying a queen xenomorph embryo. This also explains why she survived her previous encounter with the alien. Ripley knows she won't be killed as long as she carries this monster, so she asks Dylan to end her life. He refuses, saying the creature must be destroyed first, and then they can do whatever she wants. They devise a plan to lure it into the foundry area and drown it in molten metal. Many people lose their lives during this mission, and Dylan himself heroically sacrifices himself to drive the xenomorph into the trap. From above, a torrent of molten metal crashes down, submerging the creature. But moments later, it leaps up again. Ripley quickly activates the fire sprinklers, causing a drastic drop in temperature that shatters the alien. This marks yet another triumph for Ellen Ripley. At that moment, Weyland-Yutani's rescue team arrives. A man resembling Bishop approaches Ripley, revealing he's the one who designed the courageous android. He adds that if Ripley returns with them, they'll surgically remove the xenomorph inside her and kill it immediately. Knowing Weyland-Yutani's intentions to use the xenomorph as a biological weapon, and with her trust shattered, Ripley refuses. She walks to the foundry area and plunges herself into the blazing lava. Alien 3 ends, a bittersweet conclusion to the life of one of cinema's greatest heroines. Yet strangely, Ellen Ripley's journey doesn't end here. 200 years after the events of Alien 3, scientists on the spaceship Auriga managed to clone Ripley from a blood sample taken before her sacrifice. However, the Xenomorph Queen's DNA has merged with Ripley's, meaning every clone has a monster within. On the 8th attempt, scientists succeed in creating a Ripley identical to the original, even extracting the embryo from her body. Thanks to the alien DNA, Ripley is now stronger and possesses reflexes far superior to a regular human. Her blood can corrode metal, just like the xenomorphs. The science team even manages to control the Queen. Meanwhile, a group of 6 mercenaries arrives on Auriga. They're there to trade humans who will serve as hosts for the many facehuggers available. The crew of the Betty encounters the cloned Ripley, and shortly after, Call, one of the members, recognizes Ripley and attempts to kill her. Call suspects Ripley is a tool for Auriga to breed more xenomorphs, but the Queen has already separated from Ripley. At that point, the mature xenomorphs become aware of their acidic blood and kill each other to escape. In their retreat, 2 of the creatures kill a scientist and abduct Dr. Getteman, the project leader. Once free, the deadly duo wreaks havoc on Auriga, killing many in the process. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Wren reveals that Auriga is on a course back to Earth. In other words, the world would be invaded by aliens if the course wasn't stopped in time. Therefore, the survivors decide to board the Betty and burn Auriga to ashes. Soon after, Ripley discovers a room filled with failed clone versions of herself, all sharing terrifying appearances. Ripley 7 asks Ripley 8 to free her, and the synthetic heroine sheds a tear before torching the entire room. Now, the Earth Protection Team must cross through a flooded kitchen area to reach their destination. However, they have no idea that 2 monsters are following them closely. One of them raises a gun, blasting one xenomorph to pieces, but the other quickly retaliates. Just as things get heated, Wren betrays them and shoots Call in the stomach. The room's doors slam shut, preventing anyone from moving forward. One team member has to clear the way by sacrificing himself alongside the xenomorph. Then Call reappears, unharmed as if she hadn't been shot. It turns out Call is an advanced android with the ability to think and empathize just like a human. After being convinced by Ripley, Call hacks into Auriga's mainframe, setting it on a self-destruct course to eliminate all the creatures on board. Call also guides the xenomorphs to take revenge on the treacherous Wren. But, on the way back to the Betty, Ripley is captured. To make things worse, Wren recklessly injures Purvis and restrains Call. At this moment, the creature inside Purvis has matured to its final stage. Knowing he has no chance of survival, Purvis goes berserk and beats Wren relentlessly. In one last move, he pulls Wren into his chest, allowing the chestburster to burst through both of them. The Betty crew then unloads a barrage of bullets, killing the bizarre creature before it can fully grow. Meanwhile, Ripley is brought to the Queen Xenomorph's nest. Here, a mad scientist has been tied up to be prey for the facehuggers, but he still babbles on. Thanks to Ripley's genetic influence, the alien queen can now reproduce naturally. She gives birth to a creature of a completely new form, one with a more human-like appearance. However, this mutated xenomorph immediately kills its mother. It approaches Ripley with affectionate gestures, thinking she is its real mother. Seizing the moment while the monstrous child is distracted, Ripley escapes to find her way back to the Betty. Both Ripley and the new hybrid xenomorph make it onto the ship. While Ripley carries out her mission, the creature appears, mistaking her for Ripley. Ripley then reveals herself and uses her own acidic blood to break the glass window. The intense vacuum of space pulls the xenomorph against the shattered window, where it screams in agony. As its body is torn apart and pulled into the void, Ripley sheds a tear, knowing she has lost yet another part of herself. Finally, Auriga collides with Earth's atmosphere, exploding into oblivion and taking the entire horde of monsters down to hell. After a long ordeal, the Betty lands back on Earth, but now the planet is nothing but a wasteland. The Alien series ends with a character asking Ripley about her future plans, only to receive a vague and bitter response. And that's everything that happened in the Alien universe. What a long journey, right? Do you love this series? Let me know in the comments, and please subscribe to get notifications for new videos. You can also comment on the movies you'd like me to summarize if possible. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.